Today we're going to show you how to change the water filter housing on your refrigerator, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a putty knife, a 5/16 nut driver, and a 1/4 inch nut driver. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, there's a pretty good chance that you'll need to get to the back of the refrigerator and access the inlet fill valve to gain a little extra length in our water tubing. So we'll have to pull the refrigerator forward enough, turn off the inlet water supply, and also disconnect the power to the refrigerator. Now to do this repair, we'll first of all need to remove the grill cover across the bottom at the front. So just open up the doors and take your putty knife, and just go down in behind that grill and just pry outward on it, pop it loose. Then we can do the same on the opposite side. Show you the arrowhead connectors on the back of that grill that fit into the spring clips that are mounted to the frame. So just set that aside. We can now close those doors up. Now with the grill removed, we can next just pull that filter out of the housing. And next, just depress the filter lock, pull that straight out and set it aside. Remove the two 5/16 screws. And just pull that housing forward enough and a little bit to the left so that we can release this wire retaining strap. And the hook on that strap just fits through a hole on the side of that housing. And pull the housing completely forward. And if need be, you may have to remove the back panel and disconnect tubing from the back of the valve or lengthen up the inlet tubing from their supply. So if we need to access the back where the water valve is, we'll need to remove this back cover. So remove the screws across the bottom, one against the condenser fan motor bracket, and then untuck it from the top and set that aside. And that one will give you access to the valve that we can pull that forward and disconnect the inlet to that valve, which comes from that filter housing. And we also may want to loosen this screw for the inlet to the housing. That will give us a little extra tubing to work with. And these two 1/4 inch screws holding the valve. And of course, if we're attempting this repair, we'll also want to make sure that we have the power disconnected to the refrigerator. And just pull that valve out through the back, just enough that we can access the inlet to it at the back here. And then we're going to depress that little collar and then pull the tubing out. Next, we're just going to depress that collar on the top of that fitting, and we'll press it right up against the housing and then pull the tubing away from the housing. Same for the opposite one, and then discard the old housing. Now next we're going to retrieve the tubing, pull that forward, and then we'll fully insert it into these couplings until the bottom's out. So you need to get a good grip on that tubing, press it all the way in, and then pull back on it, and that will lock it in place. Next, we'll slide that housing back into position, making sure that we don't kink that tubing. You may need to go to the back of the refrigerator to pull any excess out of the way. And before we attach it, we'll drop that retaining strap into the hole on the side, press it back into position, and install the 5/16 screw, tighten those securely. Next, we'll reinstall the filter, keeping the closed side of that cap in the up position. And then we'll also need to remove the cap on the reject button off of the old housing. So with a putty knife, we're just going to loosen that up in that slot, pop that off, and then we'll slide it onto the new housing, and fully insert that filter until it pops out. Now with the housing and filter completely installed, we'll next go to the back of the refrigerator, and if you've removed any tubing from the fill valve, we'll need to reconnect that. And since we removed the inlet tubing to the valve when we were changing that filter housing, we will need to reconnect that. So we're just going to make sure that we have it fully inserted into that valve, pull back on it to lock it in position, and tuck the tubing carefully inside the compartment, making sure that we have no kinks. Then reinstall the 2 machine screws that hold that bracket to the side of the cabinet. And we can also pull the inlet to that filter housing, line that up, reattach the screw to the back of the cabinet, and just check and make sure that we have no kinks in that tubing and it's not restricting anything. And then we can reinstall the back panel. And then we can turn the water supply back on and check for any leaks, particularly where the fitting is at the back of the housing. And if everything is okay, we can next install the grill. And that is easier if we open the doors fully, then line up those arrowhead connectors. And then just press it into place. And we suggest that you run the water through the dispenser for a couple of moments just to clear any air that may have gotten into the lines, and then your repair is complete.